Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for our public information meeting. We appreciate you spending the next hour with us as we present the 60% design for Resilient Bridgeport's National Disaster Resiliency Flood Risk Reduction Project. Before we start, I would like to introduce the Connecticut Department of Housing Commissioner, Sailor Masquero Bruno. Commissioner?
Thank you, Shantae. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an update on the progress of the Resilient Bridgeport project. Shantae and her team has been doing a fantastic job to make sure that we advance this important project in an effective and timely manner. So with that said, Deputy Commissioner Shantae Hanks, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. As members of the greater Bridgeport community, I trust that you are familiar with this federally funded state project and may have met with the Resilient Bridgeport team prior to today. Over the past year, the team has grown. The Department of Housing is still the lead agency, but we have partnered with the Department of Transportation to assist with planning and construction and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for flood control infrastructure ownership and maintenance. We continue to work with WSP, our prime design consultant, and Wagner & Ball, who consults for urban and environmental architecture. Before I introduce the members of our team who will serve as members of tonight's panel, I want to thank HUD, who is our primary source of funding, National Fish and Wildlife for their $250 grant awarded, to the NDR FRRP project, and FEMA. We are finalists for a $10 million grant for the FEMA PDMC grant. So everyone, please keep your fingers crossed. I also want to thank Congressman Himes and the members of the federal delegation for supporting this project and their support and voting for an extension which granted all awarded states and territories an additional year to expend the HUD funds for these projects. The deadline was 2022 and is now September 30th, 2023. Finally, I want to thank the City of Bridgeport, both the municipality and you, the community, for being active members. Next slide, please, Megan. Thank you. During tonight's presentation, only the members of the panel will be on screen and attendees are muted. The meeting will be recorded, and as you can see, we are also using closed captioning. Attendees can submit questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will read and answer questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, when submitting your questions, please include your organization or group affiliation. If you are not representing a group or an organization, you can simply type resident and your city or town. Finally, if you have follow-up questions after the presentation, you will certainly have the opportunity to have a second bite at the apple. You can submit those questions to us and we will respond. So, next slide, please. Tonight's agenda. Because we have, let's call it an internal vernacular, if you will. We have added a number of acronyms and their definitions, and we included a glossary of terms, and we'll break all of that down for you tonight. Program overview, we'll obviously discuss the project and the design update. That's why we're here, right? For the 60% design. And then we'll conclude with Q&A. Next slide, please, Megan. Glossary of terms. Okay, so this is what I was referring to. It may not be terms that you're used to using every day, but we are. So Resilient Bridgeport is the first. We all know what that is, right? But just in case. So Resilient Bridgeport is a resilient strategy comprised of 2 pilot projects, Rebuild by Design, which you'll hear us refer to as RBD, and the Flood Risk Reduction Project, but you'll hear us refer to it as FRRP or NDR, which is the National Disaster Resiliency. These projects are focused on protecting homes, businesses, and infrastructure in the south end of Bridgeport from chronic and acute flooding in order to foster long-term prosperity in this neighborhood. Head of Park, the area of Seaside Park, bounded by University Avenue, Broad Street, Main Street, and the shorefront. For those of us that are from Bridgeport, it's where the old Conti's was, that area. And Resilience Gateway, proposed entrance to Seaside Park from the terminated end of Main Street at the northern intersection of Main and University Avenue. Next slide, please. Thank you. And these are the acronyms that I spoke of. I don't expect you to memorize them all, but just try and become familiar with them. Connecticut DOT. So you'll see TT, we just refer to it as DOT, but CTDOT, or you've probably also heard of it as CONDOT, Connecticut Department of Transportation. Connecticut DEEP, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Connecticut DOH, Connecticut Department of Housing, FEIS, that's our final environmental impact statement. FRRP is the Flood Risk Reduction Project, which is the project we're discussing tonight. And you'll also hear it referred to as NDR, the National Disaster Resilience Project. HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. RBD, Rebuild by Design, that's our other project. And ROD, Record of Decision. ROW, Right of Way. SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office. And WPCA, Water Pollution Control Authority. So I'll just give you a second just to look at those acronyms. All righty. Megan, next slide, please. And next slide. Now I want to introduce you to the Resilient Bridgeport team. I am Shantae Hanks, the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Housing. I don't recall if I said that when I welcomed you, but it doesn't hurt to say it again. Welcome. And we also have Hermia Delaire. She is the program manager for the Sandy program at DOH, and she also works with me lockstep on the Resilient Bridgeport projects. And we have Jeff Ozuski. He is our admin support. For the Connecticut Department of Transportation, we have Brett Stark. We also have Andy Fessenmeyer that's unable to join us, but he was a part of our other two meetings, our other presentations of the 60% design. So we just want to shout them out. WSP, we have Rob Yergin tonight. You'll hear from Rich Pettinelli, Megan Savage. When I say next slide, please, Megan, that's Megan. And you also have Grant Allaire. We have Kelly Reinhardt from Wagoner and Ball. And we probably have David Wagner, which is traveling, but he definitely calls in most of the time to support us during these meetings. They are urban and environmental architects. It's Kelly from Reed Hildebrand. They are landscape architects for Seaside Park and the Stormwater Park. Okay. And finally, I want to shout out, they're not a part of the panel, but DEEP, as I said in the beginning, they are one of our partners here, and they are a sister agency. So I want to also mention DEEP as members of the Resilient Bridgeport team. Next slide. So program overview. Our goals of the program, right, are to improve condition in Bridgeport's South End neighborhood. The general components are the flood barriers, pump stations, elevated roadways, stormwater channel, and a resilience center. Now, you've probably heard the resilience center will be located at the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center. And Maisa Tisdale, the executive director, is working in coordination with the Resilient Bridgeport team. And we want to congratulate them on their celebration this year of their 200th anniversary. Also, the federal grant funding through HUD. As I mentioned, HUD is our primary source of funding for both projects, Rebuild by Design, $10 million, and National Disaster Resilience, that's the FRRP project, the one that you will be seeing the 60% design tonight, that's $46 million. Next slide, please. So, program status. NEPA, the EIS, which is the environmental impact statement we talked about, and the acronyms, and the ROD, and preliminary design are complete. Final design initiated for both projects. Programmatic agreement with SHPO. We're in a great place. Documentation mitigation of Seaside Park impacts, and the federal grant expenditure deadline extended to September 30th, 2023. Next slide, please. So this is the part where I pass the virtual mic over to Rich Pettinelli. He's our lead design for Resilient Bridgeport. Rich?
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Again, yes, I'm Rich Pettinelli. I am the technical lead with WSP. So this slide just is to orientate us all again as to where these projects are. The Rebuild by Design is up in the former Marina Village site. We'll talk briefly about that tonight. And then the Flood Risk Reduction Project, formerly known as NDR, runs from the UB campus, Goodwin College campus, across the 60 Main Street parcel, and then up through the power plants, and ties into the rail line just north of Ferry Access Road. Next slide. So where do we stand with the projects? So rebuild by design. This project is an extension of Johnson Street from Columbia to Aranistan Avenue. We will build a stormwater park to handle some of the stormwater in the area and alleviate some flooding situations. That park will drain north to a pump station we're going to construct at the intersection of South Avenue and Aranistan. And from there, the stormwater will be pumped via a force main into Cedar Creek, located on the left-hand side of the screen here. Next slide. So we went over the major components. RBD is in semifinal design with the 60% drawings or semifinal drawings due in about 2 weeks. We continue to coordinate with the City of Bridgeport WPCA for Seaside Avenue, or Seaside Village, I'm sorry, separation project, and with the Bridgeport Housing for the proposed redevelopment of the Marina Village site. Next slide. This just gives you an idea of where the current alignment for the extension of the road, and and the stormwater park. And this is not how the stormwater park will look in blue. This is just a representation of that's where the detention pond will be. We are working to make this a much more attractive feature than the 2 squares like this. But we're going to have a slight bend to it. We're lining up properly with Columbia and Aranistan Avenue, and we do need to do a bit of work on Johnson Street, the current Johnson Street, to bring it up to the proper grade. Next slide. So that grade is a 100-year flood elevation of 14. That is the grade that we're going to design the road to, or the minimum grade that we're going to design that road to. That's shown in purple here, and the brown is the existing conditions. So it's a couple feet of fill, not an awful lot. And again, that'll provide dry egress to the east in this situation. So you'll be able to get out of the area by traveling east and then into downtown Bridgeport. Next slide. So the big reason we're all here, the Flood Risk Reduction Project, again, formerly NDR. So this is the coastal flood defense system in South Bridgeport. It consists of the flood protection, a pump station, a force main, the resiliency gateway, and then renovations to Seaside Park in the head of park area. The semifinal design for this has been submitted and is currently under review. This slide here, just to take a minute to, is a good one to explain the work that's going on. The yellow is the road work modifications that we need to do. We need to elevate the roads up and over the flood control to maintain continuity. The blue line that you see running left to right is also called the east-west alignment. That is an earthen berm with a steel sheet pile, and we'll show a cross section of that in the next slide, I believe. But that's an earthen berm with a steel sheet pile. The steel is the actual flood control. The earthen berm is there more or less to mask it and allow development on it, over it, near it, so that it blends into the environment and we don't have this wall basically standing in the middle of a neighborhood. That continues across the 60 Main Street site. The purple that you see is a concrete T-wall, and we use that in the industrial areas. The earthen berm has a pretty significant footprint as we have to do a stable slope on both sides of the berm. The concrete T-wall is a much more narrow structure, and where we can snake that through the industrial environment that has a lot of obstructions in the area and things we can't touch. That continues north, again, crosses Ferry Access Road and ties into the flood elevations at the railroad embankment. In green through Seaside Park, that represents an open channel that we're going to discuss, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That is the discharge from waters that'll be trapped behind the flood system when it is enacted and shut down to prevent coastal flooding. We still have to get the water out of there. So that'll be the discharge channel for that. In red here is the pump station work. So the pump station is going to be located on Henry Street. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then there's a force main that will bring the waters to the head of park, as we term it, and discharge into that open channel. Next slide. So as promised, this is the earthen berm. This is a cross section. So if we cut it and looked at it, this is what we would see. It's just going to be granular fill, capped by a 6-inch topsoil layer and grassed. And this is kind of a temporary condition. There are other projects coming on that will work over this. And in the middle, this is a coastal flood defense system. This is steel sheet piling, commonly called Z-pile if you see it. This is the bulkhead that you see on the shorefront, or a similar product to it. So this is driven to a depth of about 40 feet. And this is the actual flood protection. This design allows us to work in this embankment area. It's not a levee or a dike which has restrictions to working on the slopes. This allows us to get in there and really get future development relatively close to the coastal flood defense and not impede development of the neighborhood once this project is in. Next slide. This is the second technology that we're using for the coastal flood defense system. So this is a concrete T-wall. It's called such because if it's essentially an inverted T, right, an upside down T. The stem wall is the actual flood protection. The horizontal area is a foundation to offer stability. This is seated on H-piles, which act as the foundation. H-piles are essentially I-beams or a building structure you'd see like in a garage. The steel sheeting, it looks like an I, is also an H. That H-pile is driven down to refusal if we can make it, or to bedrock. And that is the actual foundation for the structure of the T-wall. In between the H-piles, we do run a 15-foot or so deep steel sheet pile, much like the steel sheet pile that was used in the earthen embankment. That is to prevent seepage underneath the concrete T-wall during a flood event. And that again goes to 15. It can be interrupted. It just leads to a little more seepage, and we account for that in the analysis of the wall and the design of the pump station. So if we're going over major utilities and stuff, we can not put the sheet pile on and just span it. Next slide. So briefly to touch upon the road work that we're going to be doing. So Broad Street is going to raise up at a 5% grade, cross over the coastal flood defense system, which is located in University Avenue, and then back down and tie in a little bit north actually of Linden Avenue. The top elevation, or the highest elevation, is going to be about 15.5. That's about 9.5 feet higher than the current elevation in that area. Main Street, we cannot do a ramp up and over on. There are 3 houses or structures at the intersection of Main Street and Henry Street to the south of Henry Street. Those 3 structures would be looking out at the ramp if we were to design it. So essentially from the second floor of the first structure, you would look out your second floor window and see a car driving by. It really is an overbearing impact on those structures, and the decision was made, we cannot ramp it. We're going to instead terminate Main Street as a through street and install the Resiliency Gateway Park, which we'll have a slide to show what we're looking at a little later on. For what we term Main Street South, and that is the portion of Main Street obviously south of University Avenue, that will be ramped back down. So that'll match the slope at Broad Street with a 5% grade. University Avenue west of Broad Street, so is going to become an earthen embankment. That area is already slated for redevelopment with Bassick High School. And we're just going to put our earthen berm there and allow them to do a plaza or whatever they choose to do on top of it. Lafayette Street does get terminated either by our project or by the high school project. Our project's calling for a temporary closure of it, really just putting some barricades up. The high school project is planning on a cul-de-sac and a major, a more permanent renovation of Lafayette Street. Next slide. So Seaside Park. So this is the area that we call head of park. And again, as the commissioner explained, it's bounded by Broad, Main, University, and the shorefront. So this area, the current horseshoe road that is there, that area is going to get elevated into a public plaza. And we call that the Belvedere. That will offer some, public gathering space. It offers some wonderful views of the sound from up there. And it allows us actually to kind of hide the pump station discharge that we need to put into the park. So it's multifunction. We did take a look and looked at what to do with this area of the park. We studied it quite extensively. The original concepts and some of the stuff you might have seen at the 30% presentations had retaining walls on University and Main Street. And then the Belvedere, or basically retaining wall at the north end. The concept at that point was to minimize impacts to the existing park, and retaining walls are the way to do that. When we took a look at it and really started thinking about what that meant, if you were at the northern end of what we call head of park, you'd be surrounded by 9.5-foot walls or more, as we'd have to put traffic protection on those walls as well. So you'd be surrounded by walls anywhere from 12 to 14 feet tall. Light would be restricted and everything else. It wouldn't be a very inviting place. We also looked at the current condition for that area of the park. That area of the park actually drains northerly. It drains towards University Avenue, as opposed to draining towards the Sound, which would be what we all would think really is there. As a result, that area is constantly wet, moist, dank, has open, number of times I've been there, it has a large puddle. And that current drainage situation is stressing the trees out as their roots are getting way too much water. In addition, it's relatively low. And if we anticipate 2.5 feet of sea level rise, which this project is designing for, then the groundwater will actually come up and flood and drown those trees as it surrounds the roots. So given all those factors, given the fact that the walls will make a very enclosed environment, given the fact the trees are distressed and the existing grading is wrong, we looked at other options, and we came up on what we feel is the best solution, which is to regrade that area and replant it with trees that are high enough to survive for the foreseeable future. We're setting it up for a success when sea level does rise, and our design year in this project is 2070. So we're setting the park up for the next 100 or 150 years, and we think that's the best way to go. As I discussed previously, with the pump station, we are doing an open channel discharge that will go through the head of park. We will talk about that a little bit further. So the head of park modifications will improve the current conditions. It's not a very good place to be sitting down and having a picnic. It's always dank and wet. We hope that will increase public use of this area. It has a lot of things going for it. And it improves the conditions for the trees and allows them to prosper in the future. Next slide. So some of you have probably already seen this slide. This is our design plan for the drainage system in the park. The left side shows the low flow condition when we don't have a lot of water. And I should preface this by saying we are putting a pump station in, and is not the intent or design of this pump station to operate every time it rains in the neighborhood. The current drainage system works most of the time, and there's really no need to operate the pump with wear, tear, and cost of pumping when the normal drainage system will handle it. But we do recognize that the area is plagued by what we call nuisance floods. When we get a bad tide condition with a significant rain event, you all know you get water coming out of various catch basins. To help with that, two things will happen. Contract H is coming in, which is a separation project by Bridgeport WPCA. But we also do have this pump station, and it is an asset to the area. And we don't want to actually just leave it idle for the next big coastal event. That seems to be a waste of a resource, and it's not a good operating plan for a pump station. They do need some exercise. So what we are designing is a connection to the existing drainage system on Henry Street, which is the main outfall area for this neighborhood. We will set a high level overflow. So when the water starts coming up in the drainage system, before it starts popping out of manholes, we'll pull off some of that water and pump it out. It's not going to solve the entire drainage in the neighborhood. There's a limit of zone of influence that the pump station can handle or can impact, but it is going to address some of the more critical areas and areas that experience some of the most flooding. So when we have a low flow, a regular rain event, we're capturing local drainage in the area. We'll have a condition on the left where the water will be in the channel that we designed, the low flow channel. When a larger storm comes around, say a nor'easter or a 25-year storm, a pretty good rain event, then that low flow channel is not big enough. And we don't want to design this massive channel like an LA river conduit. That's just not what we want for this area. What we want to do is trying to match the natural systems. So if we have that 25-year event or nor'easter or such, then the low flow is full, but the park area is designed to overflow that area. And this is what natural streams do. They have a secondary bank system in a natural stream. That will be here in the park as well. So areas that you might have had a picnic on Saturday are going to be underwater on Sunday, and that's what we want. That is the intermediate flow, and that then comes down, and all these flows discharge underneath that is Soundview Drive, sorry, at that location, through a series of a culvert down there, and then into a stilling basin, and then we just cascade over what's called a level spreader, which is basically a curb put in the ground. So it's a level area that it goes over, and it cascades over that weir or level spreader and down into the Sound. In the third condition on the right, this represents the next coastal event. So the next Sandy rolls in or the hurricane rolls in. The pump station is cranking at its full capacity. We've exceeded the bank capacity of both the intermediary and the low flow channel, and we might be dealing with coastal waters coming in. At that point, the the coastal flood defense system is acting. It's keeping the water south of it, but the head of park is flooded, and this is a proper use for a park system on the waterfront. Flooding is a good thing. We need to put that water and that volume somewhere, and a park is much better than a building. Next slide. So this is the resiliency gateway. Excuse me. So this is our concept for the resiliency gateway at the northern intersection of University and Main Street. So it'll be a series of rises, a channel that, or a pathway that zigzags up the slope. It is ADA compliant. You actually can just walk upstairs as well, and it gives a place for public gathering and and a nice area to view the Sound and to move up and over the coastal flood defense system. Next slide. So this is the head of park. This view is from Main Street, looking northeasterly, I guess. You could see the tower, the harbor unit, or the smokestack that harbor unit 3 represented in the background. This is a view of what we call the Belvedere. So it'll be a stone facade. It'll have the discharge underneath it. I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And then there's a stilling basin that gentleman in brown pants is in. So it's not raining today. And then secondary weirs to allow the water to discharge from that area. The stone that you see here leading down to the bottom of the screen, that represents the low flow channel. So in a low flow, again, the water is in there. When we get one of those intermediate storms, this plaza area or the yard area where the lady's playing soccer and the gentleman's walking his dog, that area will be flooded to various stages during a low flow, but it is designed to drain back and dry out so it can be used again. And again, this is elevated and properly graded, so we don't have the standing water that the head of the park currently experiences. Next slide. And I should mention, you can see that we'll put pathways in and sidewalks so that we can access the park and have some a nice public experience there. This is a second view. This is from the Main Street side. So we're looking at maybe a little gathering area that we designed there. Again, we have the Belvedere. This slide does show it shows it a little bit better, the discharge from what we call the cistern, which is the tank that the pump station will discharge into. That'll be a multi-stage, what we call a weir. It's a way of discharging the water. We keep it in various stages because this pump station is going to have a very wide range of flows associated with it. The low flow from the pump station is 12.5 CFS. The high flow from the pump station during a coastal event and a 100-year storm is 125 CFS. So we stage the weir so we get some life and action to it. If we did one straight discharge weir or level, at the low flows, it would literally just trickle over it. It would probably just cause moss and mold to grow at the corner. We want some action to that and some velocity, a little bit of velocity associated with it. And so we stage that weir so that the various levels of flow all get to have a little bit of play to the water and add some interest to it. And again, at the the whole thing, the 125 is going from edge to edge, and quite a lot of water is coming out. Next slide. So quickly touching base on the pump station. So we looked at a number of locations for the pump station, as we explained in the 30% presentations. We settled on a location on the 60 Main Street parcel on Henry Street. It seems to make the best sense. The pump station is going to be a submersible pump station. So the pumps are actually in the water in the wet well. They work best for the range and the conditions that we're looking at this pump station. The pump station is sized to handle a 100-year storm event, so that's a pretty sizable storm. As I explained previously, we are tying it into the existing drainage system to help alleviate the nuisance floods that plague the neighborhood. There was some talk at 30% of allowing public into the pump station with what we for educational opportunities. With the pump station that was selected, there's not a lot to see, and there's not a lot of public areas that are safe. The submersible pump station, the pumps are actually in the water, so there's nothing to see there. The wet well is a confined space. And if we let you into the building as it stands, you see a bunch of electrical cabinets that you certainly don't want to open because there's a lot of electricity running through them. We did look at other methods, and we've incorporated other educational opportunities into the pump station, and we will discuss those in a minute. And again, as I just explained, this pump station goes through a bunch of through two force mains, a 36-inch and an 18-inch, and then discharges into the cistern, and from there into the open channel over that weir I just explained. Next question, next slide. So this shows a view of where that pump station and a rendition of it is. So the pump station is back on Henry Street. That's the building shown all the way to the right here, not white. It has a potential of being connected up to the Resiliency Park with a public walkway. And we have some opportunities for educational gathering here as we explain what's going on. With the fencing that we're looking at along the walkway, we can put educational placards up explaining what the water is. We have some ideas. They are concept at this point of what we could do along that walkway to really enlighten the public as to what that pump station is and what it's doing. Next slide. So this just shows the water route that we're going to have, and we'll explain it with signing and such all the way through. Again, the pump station's up here in Henry. It goes through force mains, underground pipes, down to the cistern at the head of Park, and from there it exits that weir and goes through the open channel at various stages before discharging into Long Island Sound. This is green technology. The channel offers an opportunity to clean the water with various plantings and just filtration. So this is a very good way of treating stormwater, and we have a nice long run coming down. So we will improve the quality of the water that we're discharging. Next slide. So these are some architectural renderings of what that pump station experience might be. You can see on the left-hand slide, there's a gentleman in the middle in the shade. He is actually looking through a viewport. So we are going to put a window in that it looks into the wet well. So you will be able to see at least one pump. We're evaluating the actual view shed in there, but you will see at least one pump and understand what's in that pump station. Again, in the electrical room, which is located above, there's literally nothing to see. The area has an overhang so that, you know, if a classroom or something wants to come and explain, review the water that is going through and the water cycle we're looking at, there's an area to gather. And again, we'll put educational placards here. The right-hand view shows that potential path to it. And we're looking at, you know, possibilities of putting in some old pumps here, you know, cut open, and you could see the inside workings of a pump, a section of the piping, the force main. An idea we're exploring, which I kind of like, is the benches are actually made out of that pipe. It's 36 inches. It's a pretty good sized pipe. And you get an idea for the magnitude of the infrastructure that we're installing here. Next slide. Just two more views here that show that pump station from 60 Main Street, and then the right-hand view shows the lighting accents that we can do at night to make this honestly one of the most attractive pump stations I've ever worked on. Next slide. So with this coastal flood defense system, you know, this is essentially a wall that we need to install to keep the neighborhood dry, and you know, during normal days, that we don't want that wall to be an impediment to travel. So we're going to install a number of gates that are going to be open most of the time. They're open only with the exception of an impending coastal surge. There'll be gates at Broad and Main Street. There'll be a gate to access the outfalls by Harbor Unit 5. There will be gates along Atlantic Street, and also to access the PSEG property, a couple gates to service the industrial uses going on the north-south alignment, and then a final gate at Ferry Access Road. We're using two types of gates in this project. One is a roller gate, and I'll explain these in the next two slides. And the second type of gate is a stop log gate. So next slide, please. So this is the roller gate. We're going to use this at Atlantic and Ferry Access Road. This is a steel door basically that slides back and forth, usually activated by a pickup truck attached to a winch that pulls it shut. Very, well, not very easy, but easy to open and close, quick to do so. So these are used in areas that we want to really establish connection back through as soon as possible. It does require a little bit of maintenance. We have to keep the wheels greased and oiled. We have to keep the track clean and the receptacle that it slides into clean. So there is maintenance required in that. And these are exercised, you know, quarterly or yearly, just to make sure everything's working properly. Next slide. This is a second type of gate. So this is a stop log gate. Under normal conditions, again, there'll be one of these at Broad and Main Street. So if you cross Broad and Main Street when we're done, what you will see under a normal day, one like today, is you will see an 18-inch concrete grade beam, essentially. But instead of asphalt, there'll be 18 inches of cement in the roadway. There will be receptacles that will accept bolts and allow us to set up pillars. And the number of pillars that are set up is dependent upon the width of the gate, because these stop logs only come so long. But in an event of a storm, impending storm, the pillars will be put in, the road is shut, the pillars are put in, and then stop logs are stacked to the required height. Now, Broad and Main, it's only 3 or 4 feet. Some of the other ones, it gets up higher than that. But these are stacked up, and this acts as the continuation of the flood control, and it allows, again, allows the road to be open during normal days. The coastal event passes, somebody comes back out, we pull these beams that you see here, the horizontal lines, we pull those stop logs out, take out the pillars, and put everything back to normal, and we're back to crossing over just a concrete grade beam. Again, these are Broad and Main, and most of the private property gates that we have, so those along in the industrial section, are these. They're a little more labor intensive than the flood control project. I'm sorry, they're a little more labor intensive than the roller gates, but they do offer advantages, and they're pretty easy to deploy. Next. So we are doing some road work. So what's that going to mean to the neighborhood, and how are we going to approach that? So this next series of slides will talk about the sequence of construction that we envision. The first step that we want to do, basically, we're going to build this, especially earth and berm. We're going to build this from west to east. So we're going to start in University Avenue. So at that point, whatever the traffic between Lafayette and Broad Street is shut, and Lafayette is shut to turn around basically into parking lots. We start constructing that earth and berm, install the steep pile to Broad Street. And at this point, all the roads are open, right, in phase one. In stage two, we now have University done, so that earthen embankment is complete. We then shut down Broad Street and University between Broad and Main. We construct the earthen embankment and the steel sea pile coastal flood defense along the Broad Street, between Broad and Main Street. And at this point, Main Street is open, Broad Street is closed. Next. So now we're done with stage two. Broad Street is open to traffic again and is paved and functioning. University actually still could be paved, maybe not, but we will shut University at Broad Street at this point. We now shut University at Broad Street and we shut down Main Street. So we build the pocket, resiliency gateway, and we build the elevated section of Main Street South. Between these two phases I just talked about, the Broad Street stage 2 and the Main Street stage 3 phase, is when we're doing the work in the park. The work in the park has to span both of those stages because of the grading. The grading in the park ties into the grading of the roads. So we can't just build the park and have basically a soil facade at Main Street, and we can't do it the other way either with Broad Street. So we'll be working across that park as we continue the project from Broad through Main. This is stage 3 when Main Street is complete. That again then is open to traffic south. It no longer allows access across the coastal flood defense system. And at that point, we can continue working on this and the concrete T-wall as we move further to the east and then turn north to the rail line. That essentially is stage 4 of the construction. Next. So schedule-wise, as I said, we did submit the 60%. We are in the middle or starting the permit application based upon those drawings. Those will be going in late spring, early summer. We will have a 90% semifinal design public meeting. That'll be done in the fall. We are handing in the 100% design early winter 2021, anticipating our permits about a year from now. And then construction starts, bidding is spring, construction will start in late spring, early fall of 2023, with completion anticipated in 2024. That's completion of the coastal flood defense system in the spring. The pump station might lag a bit. It's a longer process actually than building that what looks like a complicated T-wall, but the pump station has more lag in it. So that's the schedule that we have. Next slide. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Megan, I think, right?
Yep. Good evening, everybody. My name is Megan Savage. I'm with WSP, and I'm one of the public information coordinators working on this project. So we have multiple ways that you can stay involved and keep up with the Resilient Bridgeport projects. Your first resource for information is the project website, www.resilientbridgeport.com. Once you're on the website, you can sign up to receive our project email announcements, and this is going to be the quickest way for you to hear about our latest news and also any upcoming events that we may have. You can also email us at info@resilientbridgeport.com to join our mailing list, and this is also your best avenue for submitting a question or comment to the project team. And lastly, you can follow Resilient Bridgeport on social media. We have both a Facebook page and a Twitter account. This concludes the presentation portion of today's meeting, and now I'm going to turn it back over to the Connecticut Department of Housing's Deputy Commissioner, who will moderate our question and answer session.
Thank you, Megan. So this is also the portion of the program, as Megan said, Q&A, that you will see all of the members of our panel. They will have their cameras on so that you can see folks as they answer your questions. So I'll allow them a moment. And while they're doing that, if you could please submit your questions, type them into the Q&A section, and we will ask them in the order in which we receive them. And also please remember to include your group or organization affiliation. And if you're a resident, please just type that. Let us know that you're a resident of Bridgeport, Trumbull, Monroe, wherever, and you're just interested in Resilient Bridgeport. Before I get started though, I also want to recognize members of our virtual dais that have joined us since we started. We have Becca Sturgis from Reed Hildebrand and Joe Marone from Arcadis. They are members of our consulting team, and Andy Fessemeyer is here with us. I'm so formal tonight, right, Andy? Is with us tonight from DLT, also a member of our team. So welcome them, and we'll get started. The first set of questions are from Dick Demichowski from the Town of Fairfield Flood and Erosion Control Board. His question reads, why is the top of the berm 14 feet? Did we include the required additional 20 inches per Connecticut statute? Also, we reference NGVD, National Geodetic Vertical Datum, versus NAVD 88, North American Virtual Datum of 1988. So which datum did we use for this project? So if you need me to repeat that, I'm going to probably punt that to Rich Pettinelli on our design team. If you need me to repeat any of that, Rich, just let me know. You're on mute. You're probably talking away.
And it was brilliant. So the NGVD versus the NAVD 88, we are on NAVD 88. I will take the hit for that. I'm dating myself. I started out in NGVD, and upon occasion, I still slip back to that one. So we are on NAVD 88. At Y14, that's the 100-year coastal, or that's the 100-year elevation and required for dry egress, which is the goal of this project at the current thing. We do have methods for adding on to it. Our final design elevation would be 16, and that would include the 100-year, 2 levels of 2.5 feet of sea level rise, and allowable wave topping. Along University Avenue, we do not have appreciable wave action. It has a lot of structures between that and the sound. The T-wall, as it goes up north, actually is elevation 16. That is a reflection of the wave action that's much more proximate there, and we do have wave action. And also the technology just lends itself better to building it to the 16 height.
Thank you, Rich. So the next question is from Don Watson, representing Trumbull Metro Advisory Board. He asked, will the pump station work if there's a power outage?
Yes, we have a standby generator in the pump station.
Thank you for that question. So the next question is from Katrina Nogeri. Katrina's representing the South End NRZ. Her question reads, the deadline is September 30th, 2023, but construction ends spring 2024. Am I missing something? No, Katrina, you're not missing anything. Let me clarify. The deadline to expend HUD funds, which is our primary funder, is September 30th, 2023. But, however, you may remember I did mention that we are finalists for FEMA funds. And we also receive funds from the National Fish and Wildlife. So those funds do not have to be expended by that deadline. And we know construction, things happen. There's inclement weather. Well, this is different. There's a pandemic, unprecedented actually during our day. So things occur that may affect your deadline. So you want to account for that and kind of prepare for it if you can. So we anticipate this construction season taking place, or this project taking place, over 2 years. I'm trying to make it just as comprehensive as possible because I get it. I get where that might sound a bit confusing. So it's the HUD funds that have to be expended by September 30th, 2023. But other funding that we have received or anticipate receiving soon does not have to be expended by that deadline. And that's actually wonderful, because all of the funding thus far for this project is federal funding. So it's very helpful that we've gotten this extra funding coming soon, so that we can cover the cost of this project. And I just have to say, and you can definitely understand as a member representing the South End NRZ, this is an amazing federally funded project for the South End of Bridgeport, that the city has not had to, or the citizens of the city have not had to pay for, but it will greatly benefit this community. Does anyone on the panel want to speak to that?
Oh, I think you covered it.
Okay. So the next question is from, let's see, I can't quite tell. Okay, I'm going to say Mr. Distenko, or Ms. Distenko is a resident of the city of Bridgeport. Does the Bassick High School work have to wait until the flood zone work is done? That's a great question. Unfortunately, that's not a question for the members of this panel to answer. Our project is not affiliated in a sense with that project. I will say that the city of Bridgeport has representation from their school construction staff. We also have members of their planning and economic development staff, as well as their city engineer. They're a part of our Resilient Bridgeport extended team. They meet with us bi-weekly, and we've also met with them on site on the ground. So we are very well aware of the Bassick High School project, if you will. And should that project move forward, we definitely can work in unison, so to speak, or in tandem, or however, their schedule works out. However, I just want to restate, we're not affiliated. We are the Resilient Bridgeport project team, 3 state agencies that are working on this federally funded project that has been in existence since about 2014 is when it was initially awarded, and then on the ground within those next couple of years. And here we are now at 60% design. So I think, I hope I answered your question, but at the same time, it's beyond our purview to speak on that. That's a city of Bridgeport project. Let's see. The next question is from Frank Lagroteria, Bridgeport International Academy, which is located on Lafayette and Atlantic Streets. He would like for us to elaborate about the timeline between the raising of University Avenue and the building of the new Bassick High School. How long before, he emphasizes, they can start after we finish. It appears that in a public meeting that took place, I believe when he refers to they, he means the Bassick School construction team, if you will. They were looking at starting their project in the next year or two. How are these projects coordinated? Currently, they are not. I really can't speak to the Bridgeport, the city of Bridgeport's Bassick High School timeline for the Bassick High School project. What I can say, which I'm happy to say, is that our project, when I talk about, this coastal flood mitigation project, we're providing dry egress in that community, right? So that includes over where the University of Bridgeport presently is, Seaside Park, all the Cottage District, and I'm specifically talking about NDR, FRRP, that side. A separate conversation is for RBD. But in any case, both projects, they're providing the dry egress that's needed so that neighborhood doesn't flood as it currently does and as it did so greatly during Hurricane Sandy. So I am happy to say that when this project is complete, we will submit an application, a LOMAR to FEMA, so that we can no longer have to worry about that being in the flood zone. So I can say that. I can speak to our project and the goals of our project. I cannot speak to the BASIC project, except to say it is going to be in the zone in which we are protecting. So yeah. The next question is from Paul Boucher, chair of the South End NRZ. Hi, Paul. 60 Main had been earmarked for residential and commercial development. Would that development affect this project? Would 60 Main's development affect this project? I mean, it's one of those things. Again, I can speak to Resilient Bridgeport and what we're doing in our goals, right? That's what we've been talking about all night. And similar to all the other properties there, including the possibly the future BASIC High School location, we're providing the dry egress that's needed. So whether it be 60 Main or University Avenue, Main Street, what have you, that whole area, we're providing the dry egress so that you can develop over there, whether it be residential, commercial, or what have you. So, or the park. Let's see. Anyone else want to elaborate? I don't want to do all the talking here. So anyone on my team, please.
I can add to the 60 Main Street. So the reason we picked the technology that we did there, the earthen embankment with the steel sheet pile, which is essentially an eye wall, is it does allow development closer to the coastal flood defense system, and in fact allows you to construct over it if you want to. The only restrictions are you can't put a foundation or buildings within 15 feet. So it'll be a 30-foot path through it that you can't put a foundation in, and no large trees, but the development can do other things on top of the coastal flood defense system. Again, hide it, much like BASIC High School will do when it builds its plaza or something.
Thank you, Rich.
Yep.
Anyone else? What is the timeline for the Seaside Village area, mainly the Ridge Avenue, Catch Basin, and along Iranison Avenue? That's RBD. That's rebuild by design. Remember, we spoke of 2 projects. That's the other project. And we'll soon be coming to you in a similar fashion to present there. But Rich, do you want to elaborate a little bit about Resilient Bridgeport? You kind of spoke about it in your presentation a little. Let's just reiterate it.
So we are working with WPCA. We do have the flows that they anticipate from the separation in Seaside Village. They did give us flows and a desired connection point to our system. That honestly is as much as I know. I don't know what the timeline is for their separation project.
Thank you. I just want to jump down. It's not a question, but it's a comment. Michelle Otero has offered to assist folks that have questions about the BASIC construction project. Michelle is the head of the school construction office there with the city of Bridgeport. Thank you, Michelle. So her email is Michelle with 1 L, MICHELE .Otero, OTERO @bridgeportct.gov. Again, that's Michelle.Otero, OTERO @bridgeportct.gov. And Michelle is best suited to answer your questions regarding the BASIC High School construction project. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, Charles from B&T. Does this whole project change the flood zoning of the area outside the retention walls?
Outside, so on the wet side, no. On the inside, we're going to file a LOMAR and hopefully remove the flood zone.
Let's clarify for folks, Rich, when we say outside, because I think if I weren't in the know and I were to think of outside the berm, the other side, I might think the Cottage District side. I might think Seaside Park side. You know what I'm saying? So let's clarify what we mean.
So my interpretation of outside would be south of it. So in the park, and the cottage district would be north inside of it. So outside, we will not impact the flood zone. Inside the cottage district, we will. We will we'll remove it from inside the protected area. I hope that clarifies the question.
If not, what I'll say is feel free to retype, to add more, because I can see them. If you want to add to your question, if it doesn't clarify for you, let me know. He said, yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay. So, gotta love technology. I think that's for all the questions that I'm seeing here. I do see someone asking about a copy of the presentation. We will be uploading this information on the Resilient Bridgeport website. So you'll be able to get it there.
Deputy Commissioner, I'm showing a couple more questions. But I'm not
mine's
seeing the
moving.
latest comment, so maybe technology is not working great. If I may, there's a question regarding the gates from Charles work at the bntweb.org.
You know what it is? Because I see multiples from Charles. I got you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, because Charles was the last question.
So he
sure,
says,
let's keep
sorry
going.
for the curiosity looking at schematic design. How do you close the space under the sliding gates to prevent water from passing through? And that's Charles Griggs from Bridgeport, director of the Bridgeport nonprofit Building Neighborhoods Together.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that also, Charles, because BNT is also another organization here in the city of Bridgeport. So yes.
So I can answer this, or if Joe, if you want to answer this. But the gates come out on rollers and they actually slide into the channel. So it drops into a channel that's in the road. And that's the channel I was saying has to be kept clean, and there's some maintenance associated with that. But yeah, it drops into a channel, and that provides the watertight seal.
Hey, Rich, this is Joe
Yeah.
Marone. I would just add that these gates do have rubber seals also, which will compress and help make a watertight seal.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Paul Boucher. Does it affect FEMA's insurance requirements? I'm thinking you're asking, and please clarify if correct me if I'm misreading this, but you're asking, will flood insurance change after this project is complete, meaning homeowners flood insurance? I'm thinking that's what you're asking. For the sake of argument, let's answer that. So yes, that is the goal, that it will decrease. I wouldn't say that you absolutely would not need it. Oh, he said correct. Thank you. I wouldn't say that you wouldn't need it. Would anyone correct me on that? I think you would still need it, but it would decrease.
Joe, you're muted if you're talking.
I'm muted?
No, Joe is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, yeah, it is. Insurance is about risk, and I don't really want to be speaking for the insurance agency and how they assess risk, but what we're doing is we're reducing the risk to the neighborhood, and I would typically anticipate changes in insurance rates based on a lower risk area.
Thank you. Property owner, Bridgeport resident Stelios, will Broad Street be affected north of Atlantic Avenue? And if so, how?
It will not be affected north of Atlantic.
Thank you, Rich. I'm glad I have multiple eyes on this. I have 4 of my own, and sometimes I still can't see everything. So I think did I miss a question? I think I covered what I'm seeing.
I see them all covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All great questions, by the way. So thank you for asking them. And please, you you still have us here for a few more minutes. So
Looks
if you
like a
have any
couple
more
others
questions-
came in, Deputy Commissioner.
I see Beth
Elizabeth
Stanta.
Yep.
Yes, okay. Hi, Beth. Resident of Bridgeport, where are the gates going to be? Okay, let me look at this again. Where are they? Okay, where are the materials for the gates going to be stored? Who will be installing them during events? Okay, that's a good question. So we need to clarify for you. I get where that could be confusing. So I'll let Rich take that.
So the gate storage, there's a number of locations that we're exploring. We haven't yet concluded where they would be. Bridgeport Public Works is a possibility. These are ones that we'd bring out the day before or something, so there is some time. As to who installs it, right now it looks like Deep is going to be managing this, and whether or not they actually do the labor or contract it out to a more local firm is again under discussion.
Thank you. Let's see. I see okay. From Mr. Justenko again. So traffic will proceed normally down Broad Street, including the bus stops, etc.
When we're done, yes.
I'm sure they're concerned about during. So
During, we will. During, no. When Broad Street's under construction, no, it will be shut to traffic. We'll work with the Bridgeport Transit to reroute that bus and come up with a different way of getting to that bus station or bus stop.
And it's important to note, we will be communicating with the public along the way. I know how inconvenient it is that your typical route, your typical schedule, you leave a house a certain time, you expect to make it to work or to school by a certain time, and then here comes this major inconvenience that you were not aware of. We don't want that to happen. So we will definitely be communicating with you. And also please follow our Facebook page. We also have a Twitter and we have a website, but we'll be communicating this information to you, please. So we have a question from Barbara Geddes. Are we coordinating or have we coordinated with the many nonprofits focused on continuous easy public access to the waterfront and more resilient planting within Seaside, through downtown and through the historic Olmsted and Vault's entrance to Seaside Park? And she's also a volunteer on the Seaside Park Wellness Trail Committee. I want to say that I personally met with them. Just to give you some of the timeline here, I joined the agency in 2019 and became project lead about a year ago now. So there's been coordination that has taken place prior to my tenure. My colleague, that's why I introduced Hermia Dallaire. She's been continually involved with the project as far as the agency, and then many of our consultants, in particular WSP, have been a part of the project before my tenure. So in terms of, and thank you for mentioning that Seaside is an Olmsted Park. I typically do that during my presentations. We really have a neighborhood gym here that we're just so used to it. We love it, but we may underestimate the unique qualities in that this is really a work of art, Seaside Park. It's made by and designed by Olmsted, the same gentleman that designed Central Park, by the way. So, yes, and it could always be more. So let's talk offline, Barbara. Please reach out and let's talk about this some more. Thank you for your question. I know there's more, I just can't see the order. They're not coming in my flow in order. Okay, here's Wendy Lindquist. Are all the trees now existing along the future open channel going to be removed? She's a Bridgeport resident. I thank you for this question, because I got to tell you, this project is so unique. There's so many nuances to it. And I mentioned that we're working with SHPO, and we also have a arborist coming in. So I'm going to let Rich or Rob elaborate on that, but yes.
So right now we think they will be. Actually, I will defer to Becca or Alex if you want to weigh in on this question.
That's right.
With Reed Hildebrandt,
Correct.
who are handling the landscaping in that section of the park.
So we are trying very hard to, thank you very much, Rich. I'm Becca Sturgis from Reed Hildebrandt, the landscape architecture firm. And actually, Barbara, thank you for your question as well. We are trying very hard to be aligned with all the major design intentions that Olmsted had and Olmsted Ambo had in their plan for the park. But we are also raising the elevations, which does mean that there is a lot of that original work that is coming out. A lot of that work has already been changed quite a bit over the years. So we're actually hoping that when the new design goes in, it is much closer to realizing the original vision for the park, which is bringing people to the water, giving them great prospect, having places for gather, providing shade, and just basically making what is, already a wonderful park so much better and so much more functional, and protecting the community. So, and I think we would love to set up a meeting to do that coordinating about the other efforts, Barbara. So that follow-up seems excellent.
Thank you, Becca. And it's important to note that it is a part of our programmatic agreement that we maintain the integrity of the park, and even as Becca just alluded, there'll be improvements that you'll see. As someone that's a native that grew up in Bridgeport, I remember the side of Conti's is what we're talking about, folks. That area has gotten sunken in. There's ponding that happens when it rains. It's not the same as it was, 20 years ago. And even the trees that line that strip, it's not the same. And when you see pictures of what it was supposed to be and how it's supposed to look, and I can remember, picnicking in that area, and you can no longer do that. So what's wonderful is our programmatic agreement dictates that we do have to maintain the integrity in terms of the look over there, and then maintain those trees, the ones that some are actually already in really bad shape. But I just can't wait till you see the final project. It's going to be amazing. So thank you for that question. And Wendy's also a member of the Seaside Wellness Team. Thank you. And Paul would like us to clarify once again, when will this project be complete? And Paul, also a follow-up question is asking regarding the horse watering statue. Oh, okay. I'm glad I read that out loud, because when I read it to myself, I was thinking, yeah, we no longer have the horses from the mounted police at the park. I just know that as a Bridgeport resident that loves seeing the horses, but it has nothing to do with the Resilient Project. You're talking about the statue. I'm not certain I didn't realize there was water in that statue. I'll have to follow up. Well, put in here your email so I can contact you offline about that. Didn't realize that was more of a fountain type statue. So we need to talk about that. And in terms of when will the project be complete, during tonight's presentation, we, once again, I'll reiterate, we said that, the HUD funds have to be expended by September 30th, 2023. However, our project completion, our anticipated date for that is September 2024. I hope that clarifies. Team, am I missing any other questions?
Deputy Commissioner, there's a follow-up comment from Beth Santa here, also regarding the landscape. I don't know if Becca's previous response covered that.
Covered it. Okay, so Beth Santa kind of followed up and added some supplemental remarks about the historical Olmsted existing landscape design is being removed from the head of the park. Is the project providing compatible design to integrate and improve this historic park? I could answer in short, yes. Becca, if you want to elaborate, I think as I was speaking, I kind of spoke to this, but Becca, if you want to speak more to it.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think if there's required follow-up, we're happy to illustrate the ways in which it's consistent.
And again, like I said in the beginning of the presentation, this is not the only bite at the apple, meaning we are accessible and available. So Beth, if you'd like more information regarding the programmatic agreement, please reach out to me. You can contact me. My email is shante.hanks@ct.gov. I'm very easy to find as a deputy commissioner. You go on our website and my email is there. But again, it's just my name, shante.hanks@ct.gov. Okay. I see another question popped up, but it must be a follow-up. Are all the trees, this is from Wendy Lindquist, are all the trees now existing along the future open channel going to be removed? I don't think so. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm speaking a little out of school, but not completely out of school, because we've been having discussions about an arborist coming in and assessing the trees. They're actually going out there and doing a tree assessment. And so I don't think so. Our goal is to maintain the integrity of this park, Bridgeport's gem, and we're required to do so, quite frankly. It's definitely holds a special place for me as a Bridgeport resident, but honestly, it's a part of the requirements of this project for us to do.
The one thing I might just clarify is that where we are raising the grade to achieve safety and to make it an accessible park, rather than, having that giant elevation gap between where the sidewalk is and where the park is, we are removing the trees. But the intention is to replace, in kind, actually, or ideally with greater number of trees where we're removing trees.
And just to reiterate a point Rich made earlier in the presentation, that because of the drainage in that area and the way the groundwater table and the drainage characteristics of the park, the trees have not fared well. Many of the trees have not fared well. The root structures are shallow and subject to damage and strong winds and flooding. So we'll have the arborist will go out and do an assessment of all the trees in the head of park, make an assessment and coordinate with us as the design team to determine which trees can be salvaged and which trees are too far gone past that point, and where now our design team will come in and do something to attempt to replicate what was out there, the characteristics of the park.
And it's also important to know, I think for me, it was important for me anyway, that we're also adding additional lighting out there. For those of us that, utilize the park quite often, we know how dark it gets on that side. And that is the side, the University of Bridgeport side, the Cottage District side. It gets very dark down there, and we're adding lighting there as well. I know it wasn't a part of the question regarding the trees, but I thought it was just important to note that. And we even have to be very intentional in the type of lighting. Again, this is a historical park. Paul Boucher asked, the protected species of the osprey nest is close to the construction site. Will the bulk be done outside of the nesting season? Oh, I don't see where we talked about this. Guys, help me out with the answer to this. I think the one part of the question is no, because it's a 2-year process. So it definitely will be during that time. If nesting season is from April to October, that's also, peak time for construction.
So Shantae, let me take a shot at this one here. I can't give a exact answer. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Stark. I'm with BL Companies. We're a liaison engineer for the Connecticut Department of Transportation. What I'll just say in response to that question is, as we talked about, as Rich mentioned in the thing, we will be pursuing the requisite environmental permits for this project here. We're working towards getting those applications in now. What conditions DEEP applies to us as part of the permit granting will be adhered to. Again, it's improper to give a firm yes or no here without understanding the greater context here, the exact nesting season, the exact distance from where things are here. But generally speaking, as part of the permitting process that we'll be coordinating through with DEEP, they will look at that, and an assessment for endangered or threatened species will be, included as part of that effort.
Thanks, Brett. And Paul, just as an FYI, our project, we're not altering the soccer field at the University of Bridgeport. I see your comment there regarding they nest in the school soccer field. Do we have any additional questions? I think, team, I need your eyes here, but I think we answered them all. Great questions, by the way. I truly appreciate your questions, because you know how it is in when you were in school, you ask questions that maybe other folks were thinking. So this was really helpful. I'll give it, a couple more seconds because I always joke and say I am not the best typist in the world. It takes me a minute. So if folks need a couple more seconds to type their questions in, I'll keep an eye out. But thank you for spending nearly 90 minutes with us this evening. It just shows how important this project is to you. And so we're all in agreement here that this is a wonderful project for the city of Bridgeport. And once again, want to thank HUD, National Fish and Wildlife, FEMA, and our federal delegation for supporting this project. Okay. Any final remarks from members of the virtual panel here tonight?
All set.
All set. All righty. Well, thank you once again for joining this evening with us for the 60% design of Resilient Bridgeport. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.